ES Audio.
From the Evening Standard in London, I'm Rochelle Travers, and this is The Leader.
Man trim with sail and oar, and just about to leave the shore.
That's 98-year-old Uriah Esson, who came to England in 1963 from Jamaica.
With glad some song the boatman sing, and listen to the boatman song.
He's one of 6 people from the Windrush generation who've shared their personal stories with ES Magazine.
Over the beautiful wave we roll.
It's part of a special project for the 75th anniversary of HMT Empire Windrush docking in Britain, a collaboration with the charity Black Cultural Archives as well as the art platform Circa. Tonight, on Thursday the 22nd of June, Windrush Day, at 8 p.m, videos of their interviews will be shown on the big screens at Piccadilly Circus to celebrate a truly remarkable group of Londoners. But for now, here's a taste of some of their stories. Starting with 98-year-old Uriah, who was in his 40s when he came to the UK.
Why did I wait so long to come? I go to America twice on farm work. And my brother came here 2 years before me. And the second year they was sending back for me now when he said I must come here. So my brother sent for me here. He's here 2 years before me. So that's why I never come that time. But when I was coming on the boat, we stopped twice in Spain and Madeira. 14 days to come here. And I meet good people on the boat, good people. I was driving for Ealing Council 3.5 years. After I leave there, I drive for Ryman Stewart, City Deliver Good, for 6 months. Then when I leave that, I drive the buses. I was a strong back for my family.
Claudette Parkin-Scott is a 68-year-old youth worker. She came to Leicester in 1965 from Jamaica when she was just 10.
Oh, I came by myself. My mum had to go back down to Kingston because I went to Kingston, get the passport. I didn't know I was there. She took me up there and signed up, and that was it. Because where you come from, you don't tell anybody you're leaving. So I didn't know. Wasn't able to say bye to anyone because I've got elder sister that didn't come. Didn't say bye to anyone because in those times you used to get the bus at certain time, maybe 6 a.m, maybe earlier, go to Kingston. So my son got me out, put me on the bus, I'm going to see my mum. And I didn't come back. And I cried for 2 weeks when I was here. When my dad, I said, Daddy, I want to go back home. He said, next week. And next week never came. I didn't like England, because coming from the West Indies, you don't say we had freedom, we had all the food to go, you pick, you do certain things. No, but as the years go by, yeah, we've had opportunities, but at the end of the day, you have to face racism. I can remember going to a shipping company in Liverpool Street and I told the agency, don't send no more blackies. So I faced, but I never let anybody put me down because nobody is better than me. And I've always had that mentality. I don't want to be like you, I want to be me. And this is who I am.
Let's go to the ads. After the break, we'll hear Lazar Silvestri's story of coming to the UK from St. Lucia in 1958 at the age of 19, and Patrick Vernon OBE from the Windrush 75 network on his campaign involving the Windrush anchor. Welcome back. On the 22nd of June 1948, HMT Empire Windrush docked in Essex, bringing 800 Caribbean migrants to Britain. It was the start of the Windrush generation, This period of time is credited with shoring up the workforce, playing a key role in establishing the NHS, as well as helping to shape and enrich the country we live in today. Lazar Silvestri told the Museum of London his story of coming to the UK from St Lucia in 1958.
When I came, I was 19. Yeah, I traveled on my own. My brother sent for me. I came to Southampton, and from Southampton I had to get boat, and I met him in Waterloo. Oh, when I first came to London, I didn't have no impression that I liked the place. But within 3 months' time, I was getting homesick. I wanted to go back home because what I miss back home is just my freeway.
Patrick Vernon OBE is from the Windrush 75 network. He's also a culture historian, campaigner and social commentator. Patrick, 75 years since the HMT Empire Windrush docked in Essex. Put it into context for our listeners. Just how much of a defining moment was that for Britain?
It was a defining moment because after the Second World War, lots of parts of Britain were devastated by bombing. East London, Coventry, other parts of the country. Also, at the time, there was a new Labour government, and they made a number of commitments and pledges around employment, around the creation of the NHS, and in terms of having a better society after the aftermath of World War II. And one of the key aspects was that actually there was a shortage of labour to work in the factories, to work in the recently established NHS, and there was just a shortage of labour. And because of the war and so many people died, it was quite clear from the government's perspective that they needed people to come from different parts of the colonies or parts of the empire to come to Britain to help rebuild Britain. So you had the 1948 British Nationality Act, which ironically wasn't really aimed at people coming from the Windrush generation. It was actually, they were hoping to have people coming from the Dominion countries, such as Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, and Canada. But obviously, the people from the Windrush generation, i.e. people that came from the Caribbean, but also people came from Africa and Southeast Asia, saw this as an opportunity as migrants, economic migrants, to come to Britain to rebuild Britain. That was part of my parents' journey too, and they played a key role. I mean, in terms of the NHS, there's a definitely umbilical cord between the establishment and the running of the NHS as it was in 1948, as it is today, to be quite honest. The NHS is the biggest employer of Black, Asian, and ethnic minority communities in Britain today. You talk about retail, you talk about manufacturing, you talk about transport particularly, especially in a place like London. You talk about art, culture, just life, but communities, people, relationships. Love, impact, major impact. You have to recognise that the people that came from that Windrush generation were the most talented and the youngest that were coming from the Caribbean. It was like a brain drain, people leaving the Caribbean to come to Britain. Doctors, nurses, engineers, teachers, mechanics, a whole range of skills. And when they arrived here, they thought that they could easily get jobs based on the qualifications and their aptitude already. But actually, there was a discrimination. It was called the colour bar. And it was basically you were discriminated because of your colour of your skin. And that colour bar had impact on housing. So people couldn't get social housing there was a sons and daughters policy where essentially if you were local, which was a euphemism for being white, you weren't entitled to get social housing. So a lot of people had to either go in the private sector in terrible housing conditions or had to buy their own property. There was discrimination in employment. Today, we talk about the ethnicity pay gap and the gender pay gap. But back in those days, in the 1560s, it was like an ocean. There was discrimination, in entertainment. It was difficult for people to go into socialise, to go into pubs because there was discrimination. That led to what happened in Nottingham and as well as Notting Hill in 1958 when you had the race riots. And then there was discrimination in people going to churches. It was quite profound, this colour bar.
Why is this anniversary such an important one?
I think, this is important. I mean, I look at my family. My dad is going to be 92 soon and my mum's 89. And, they are the last of that generation. I mean, by the time we reach the 85th, 90th commemorations, virtually that generation would have disappeared. So this is our opportunity for Londoners. If you know anyone from the Windrush generation, neighbours, friends, someone that you might see going to the local corner shop or on a tube or on the bus, just say to them, thank you very much for being here. Thank you much for your contribution, and we value you. If we could just do that, that would make a difference, really would.
When did society change and the Windrush generation finally get the recognition they deserved from the public?
I think, ironically and sadly, it took the Windrush scandal 2018 for the public, and particularly for Londoners, to really appreciate and understand and recognising that this history of Windrush history is also British history. And it took the scandal, which essentially where children of the Windrush generation came to Britain on their parents' passports, and many of them are now in their 50s, 60s and 70s, who were denied access to healthcare, lost their jobs, lost their housing because they couldn't prove they were British because of the hostile environment policy. But they were British already because they had been here for such a long time. It took that for the campaign I was working on, leading on for many years, campaigning for National Windrush Day, which was the original idea was from Sam King, a Windrush pioneer, who was actually one of the passengers on the Empire MT Windrush ship, and he also served in the Second World War. But I worked with others, and we had this campaign for a number of years for a National Windrush Day, and it took the government at the time to recognise that, and it was adopted in 2018, and that's one of the reasons why everywhere we'll organise events. We need to have more recognition. My vision, I'm hoping that moving forward in the future, that there are lots of depositories of oral histories in local museums and archives and various institutions in London. It'd be fantastic to have a super duper database where anyone could access interviews, pictures, memories, either for school projects or just to understand this history of migration. I'm part of a new organisation that's just been established called the Windrush Anchor Foundation. We have plans to recover the anchor of the Empire Windrush ship. The ship itself is at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea off the coast of Algeria. It's been there since 1954 after it got engine failure and caught fire and it sunk. And we want to recover the anchor using the latest robotic technology, because the ship is actually 3,000 metres down the bottom of the sea, bring it back to the UK, restore the anchor, and link to an educational programme and find a location in Britain for the anchor as a public monument and contribution reflecting the Windrush generation.
The fallout from the Windrush scandal is still going on. You're part of a group of campaigners who dropped a petition off at Downing Street recently. Just tell us about that.
So the petition that was presented by the Black Equity Organisation, which I actually was involved in, that was basically demanding that the government implement the report that they commissioned into the Windrush scandal, to implement all the 30 recommendations. The Home Secretary, Sula Braverman, has dropped 3 of those recommendations. She believes they're not relevant, but they are relevant because we want proper accountability, we want proper scrutiny, and if the government is talking about righting the wrongs, part of that process of righting the wrongs is actually listening to the experiences of those who have been impacted as a result of the hostile environment policy, and the government should take their views seriously to try and rectify that. And that's not really happened in a significant way, to be quite honest. I see Windrush Day as a bittersweet day. It's bitter because that injustice has not been resolved. I mean, lots of people are still wanting to get compensation. They want to move on with their lives. They just want something that's fair, that's reasonable. They can move on. Lots of them are suffering from depression, post-traumatic stress. The Windrush scandal is not the Windrush scandal, it's a Home Office scandal. The Home Office were the perpetrators of this scandal in the first place, and it just kind of means that we don't have the full opportunity to appreciate the contribution of the Windrush generation and their legacy, and we still need to have justice for the Windrush generation in terms of proper compensation and proper respect and recognition.
That's it from this episode of The Leader. Special thanks to the Museum of London, the charity Black Cultural Archives and art platform Circa. You can read more personal stories from the Windrush generation in ES Magazine and online via standard.co.uk/ES Magazine. This podcast is back tomorrow at 4 p.m.